So we're here with World Cup legend Sir Geoff Hurst. We asked a lot of people on social media for their questions, our Moy Park fans from Twitter and Facebook. And so we had a great response. So first off, we had Ben Martin asking the following question. So Geoff, do you think your World Cup final hat-trick record will be broken this World Cup, and by who, if you think it will? And also, is there anybody in the England squad who you think is capable of doing it?
Well, quite frankly, it's very difficult to beat the hat-trick because initially we're not seeing as many goals being scored in the finals now. So I'm very proud of that hat-trick, and I think I've got half a chance of taking it to my grave. But it is more difficult because we're not seeing so many goals in the final.
Yeah.
It's just a hard thing to do. It really is a tough thing to beat, and I don't think I'll see that in my lifetime.
No, long may it stand. Very good, excellent. Next, we have Marty Orm asking which player outside of the top 6 or 7 teams are you most looking forward to watching, or indeed, even if you're, you've got a couple of players who really stand out for you.
Well, I think you're the fan of your own country.
Sure.
I'm really interested in looking at closely at our players. Mm-hmm. We have some very good young players now this year. Lallana, Luke
Yep.
Shaw is in the squad. He's a fantastic left back. Sturridge, they're all quite young players. If you look at the Brazilian team, they've only got 3 players under 25, so they've got an older squad. Our squad particularly is quite young, and that's quite exciting. So there's a huge opportunity. Ross Barkley is another one that's come and had a great season for Everton. So I'm really looking at how the youngsters are going to do, because I think if they're not sure now, in a couple of years they should be ready, and in another 4 years, next World Cup, they could be even better.
Yeah.
But I think the thing about youngsters is that they've got to take the chance themselves.
Yeah.
They've been selected, they've got to take the chance. As we did in '66, we had a 20-year-old, a 22-year-old, a 24-year-old and a 25-year-old who made some major impacts in the World Cup then. So they've got to do much the same.
Time to step up.
It's time to step up and do it.
Great.
And they should do, because young players, young people, they have no fear. They don't.
Yeah.
It's a natural thing with youngsters. They don't fear anything. They're young and brash, and so the platform's there for them to do it.
Great. Excellent. All right. Just the final one then from Twitter, and we have Andy Jarvis, who asks, of the 3 goals in the '66 final, which was your favourite?
Well, I've been asked that question a lot, and surprisingly, although people remember either the disputed goal, still talk about that, particularly the Germans, or the final goal when there are people on the pitch. For me, the first goal was the important goal.
Yeah.
A, because it got us back in the game, we 1-0 down, and B, because it was a goal honed on the training ground at West Ham, at Chapel Heath. The quick free kick that we all talked about at West Ham, taking free kicks quickly were important, and that, so Bobby Moore to myself, the header, I think probably me was it's very fulfilling to practice things on a training ground, on a cold, wet morning with nobody there, and then take that years later to in front of an audience of millions. So that's quite rewarding. And the importance of the goal, as I said, was getting back in the game at 1-1. You don't want to get too far behind for too long. Yeah,
and that's the thing that stands out, I'm quite sure. Brilliant. Next we have on Facebook, we've got Jenny from Bangor, who asks, how do you think the game has changed since 1966, and how do you think you'd have fitted into it nowadays?
The game is unrecognisable in some respects. In most respects, okay, we still play with a football, although it's a bit lighter. The goalposts are the same size. The pitch is the same. The pitch is a lot better. Mm-hmm. We played on mud. Everything. I could spend 20 minutes on the differences in the players, the coverage, the money. How would I fit in is a good question, and I always say I'd fit in very easily. Could I play today? Absolutely. I think it was the time we played, amongst the many differences, the game was quite brutal. You look at some of the clips of the games, it's almost laughable. It was. I think players today, if players of yesterday played today, they'd be sent off in the tunnel before the game started. I think it was quite violent, but that were the rule. They were the rules. Yeah. So, and the position I played, where I had my back to the goal, where those days you could be kicked from behind. They've stopped that. Yeah. So my particular style of play, I'd have benefited hugely in the current environment. I'd have been a terrific player today.
Excellent.
I'd probably scored twice in the summer goals. I'd have probably scored 6 in the final.
Nice.
That's a good Twitter bit.
I'd have got
6 in the final.
There you go. It ties in quite well. Brendan in Belfast has asked us as well. Obviously, a lot of people wouldn't have necessarily seen you play. They've maybe seen highlights. I'm sure most people haven't
seen me play. Maybe a few granddads.
Yeah, maybe a few. So for the benefit of our fans then, when you look at modern players, is there anybody who you would see yourself compared to, his style of play, anybody who you would see as being similar to you?
Not really. I have this question asked occasionally. I think every individual player is different. Yeah. You can recognise them. You see them play without seeing their face. You can tell by their body shape, movement. They're different. Somebody, however, only in the last couple of days, in a social occasion I was at, likened me to Alan Shearer. Okay. As a centre forward, scoring goals, good in the air. I not necessarily agree with that, but I don't think there's any. Every player, every person is different. So I wouldn't like myself to anybody.
Excellent. Unique.
Yes, well, we're all. Listen, human beings are all unique. It's as simple as that. We're all different in our own ways. Whether you play sport or not, we're all completely different, aren't we?
Absolutely.
We'd be a very boring world if everybody was the same and every player was the same.
A lot of nil-all draws. Moving on then, so we've got a couple other questions that came up as well. Just on who the greatest player you played with, or indeed against. Well,
that's very easy. The best player I played with was my captain at West Ham. He was captain of West Ham United, my team, for 15 years. He captained England for 90 times and had 108 games, and one of the greatest defenders we've ever produced, Bobby Moore, who sadly passed away in 93. I grew up with him, so I'd seen him at close hand, how he was as a player, as a person, as a captain, and he was absolutely fantastic player. The player against I'd always put top is Pelé. Yeah. I played against. When you play against people, you can see when you get a close-up looking, either training or playing against them, you do get a close-up look at them. And I played against him 3 times. Once in a friendly in Rio, in '69. In the World Cup in '70, we played him in the early rounds. Yeah. And we played against my club team, West Ham, played against his club team, which was Santos, in New York in the late '60s. Yeah, very good. So seeing 3 times at close-up. One of his statistics, he scored over 1,000 goals. So remarkable.
Hard to argue.
And also physically, getting back to that physical thing, he was physically able to handle the tough time. It's quite physical in England. It was also quite physical in Brazil. And you look at some of the World Cups around that time, were also slightly more physical than today.
Absolutely.
And he had the ability to play, but also withstand the physical intimidation, which you need to do as a striker. Yeah. So he's number 1 for me.
Excellent. Okay. We touched on it briefly there, just about the England team this World Cup. Do you feel it's really more about experience this World Cup, and are they really building for 2018?
No, I don't. I think the chance is there. I've heard the comments that we're in a transitional stage. There are a lot of young players, but Roy Hodgson has said, and I take note of that, they're there because they're on merit. He's not there giving them a warm-up for the next World Cup or the Euros in 2 years' time or 4 years' time in the World Cup. So they've got an opportunity to do it now. However, it will stand them in good stead for 2 years in the Euros and 4 years in the next World Cup. So, and some players, because of the nature of a World Cup every 4 years, not many players have the opportunity to play more than one. And so, for me, I was at my peak around that time. If I'd have been 4 years earlier, 4 years later, I wouldn't have been at my peak to play. I was almost in the middle of my peak when I played for England. At that age, 24, 25, 26, was an important period. So they've got the opportunity to do it now. We did it, young kids did it in our time, and they've got the platform to do it.
Great. Okay.
So I don't see it as a preparatory thing. They're there in a World Cup, and the chance is there.
Great. Excellent. Obviously, we're here in Belfast this evening. It'd be remiss of me not to ask about George Best. Any memories?
Many. I'm also asked about where George Best comes in. We talked about the best player.
Yes.
I always say that George Best was in the top 10. In fact, I'm doing a book. Okay. I'm doing my top 50 players.
Great.
Which comes out in November. That's all nationalities over many years, and Best is in there.
Brilliant.
Memories of him. I had a few drinks with him time to time. Great company, great lad. Yeah. A sad loss.
Obviously.
Sad loss. But a fantastic player, and played in a very aggressive time. But he wasn't quite slightly built, but could withstand the sort of physical aggression that he came up against. And one of the best. I would say top 10 for me, and he would be in my book in the top 10. I can guarantee that. But I always used to say top 6 because he was that good. Yeah. Socially, I think the outstanding thing, which probably we'll all talk about George Best, is when you're out socially, it was him beating the women off with a stick. Embarrassing that when you're out and a quiet drink with a couple of lads and Just as a close observer, I always found it very amusing. Very amusing.
Excellent, excellent. And finally, I've got to ask: is it chicken nuggets or chicken Kievs for you?
I like chicken. Chicken nuggets. Where do you have those? Is that McDonald's or?
Oh no! Well, you'd have the Moy Park chicken nuggets.
Right. I'm sure I've eaten Moy Park chicken somewhere or another. I gather they supply Waitrose, so we go there. So no, I've had a Moy Park chicken, as probably all the world has, I guess.
Absolutely. There you go. Great stuff. Well, look, Sir Geoff, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Much appreciated. Thanks very much.
Good stuff. Good stuff.